We are live. All right. Let me go into Facebook, make that shareable. And if you ever go back and watch, or if you have watched the episodes, you guys will notice that I don't like to make them shareable sometimes until Ethan mentions it. So I'm like, yeah, I might want to do that. There we go. Public. All right. Okay. So I should be seeing it here in a second. All right. Well, guys, I'm back. And as you can see, the co-host, Mr. Landis, at the moment is missing. Long story short, he is actually working on his computer as we speak. So he may actually be joining us here very shortly. But until then, till we get Mr. Ethan back, here I am. We are back with another episode of the Open Fields Podcast. I, of course, am your host, Ryan Fields. Soon to be, hopefully we'll get our co-host, Mr. Ethan Landis, back here shortly. But in the meantime, we have our esteemed guest, Mr. James Hartman. Kind of give a little backstory on Mr. Hartman. James Hartman is a Hampshire County resident, grew up in Hampshire County, as did myself. Also, as you noticed in the description and on the Facebook page and the new Open Fields Podcast fan page, go check it out if you haven't accepted it yet, or the follow, like, subscribe, whatever you got to do. YouTube as well. He, as you saw on there, he is a former infantryman of the United States Army, which we will talk a little bit about. He's also a former firefighter, which we will also dig a little deeper into. But the biggest thing is, guys, is this episode, not only did we get a chance to bring on Mr. Hartman to talk about that, it's really to focus on something that seems to be very, for lack of better terms, not talked about. And it is about mental health, mental illness. And I hate to use the word illness, as I just told James a little bit ago. It's not necessarily an illness, and I don't want to bring any negativity to what we're trying to talk about, but it's just the word that kind of popped into my head. So it is really to focus on the mental illnesses, the mental health of not just women, not just men, but everybody. So again, Mr. Hartman, good sir. Welcome.
Yes.
How are you?
Yeah, good. Yeah, thank you for having me on here. Very excited, and this is a good subject. And I think years ago would probably be a really tough subject for anyone to talk to, especially going live, because you never know how many people are going to watch this, be able to go back and rewatch it. So excited to be on here, and thank you for having me.
Hey, no problem, buddy. I appreciate you, you reaching out to me and saying, hey, here's a great idea. I like to think we have great ideas with every episode that we have, but, it was a chance to really kind of delve into a little bit more, a deeper, serious, more serious conversation and topic. And I'm really glad that you reached out and said, hey, here's a great idea. Here's a topic that really doesn't get talked about a lot. James and I actually had a conversation on the phone a couple of days ago, so he's going through a lot more of that, but, we'll discuss and let him decide on what he wants to talk about. But, we got a chance to talk and kind of delve so deep into, about a 20-25 minute conversation that you could really have. And, it got me to open up my eyes a little bit and to see, this is really kind of a serious topic that it really isn't talked about. And Dean Miller here said, James, he said, God bless everything you do for our country. Salute, brother.
Right on. Thank you.
So, it's something, like I said, we do try to do anything and everything, talk about anything and everything. This isn't just necessarily a sports channel. This isn't a comedic channel. This is where we can kind of take our time to, I know I keep using the word delve into, but really just dive into the actual stereotypes and stigmas that come with mental illness and mental health. I struggle, even myself. I get on here once a week. I get on here, once every couple of weeks, and I do my thing, and Ethan does his thing with this whole podcast. And I have my own mental health issues. Like, I don't want to open up any can of worms or anything. Like, I've never really thought to myself, like, okay, I'm going to go to the extreme, and end things, or go that far. I never really thought that, but I've suffered with severe depression. I can be depressed, and I might not show that on camera. I might not show that on Facebook. I might put on a smile and say, "Hey, I'm fine," but there are times where sometimes I'm not. So, with that being said, to kind of get into a little bit of your backstory, James, growing up in Hampshire County, you kind of had mentioned to me beforehand, you know, what was it like growing up as a kid? Like, what type of childhood did you have that maybe kind of led to, how you are as an adult now?
Yeah, so obviously growing up in the 90s, we didn't have a lot of these cell phones, computers everywhere. I think the internet was probably just coming up and about, but
A
I was
simpler time,
outside.
really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's this past weekend, I wasn't on my phone very much and it felt refreshing. But being a kid playing outside, I've got pictures of playing in a teepee and all kind of stuff, just getting dirty, and it was a lot of fun. Um, so, obviously, I think you've had some other guests on here that I went to school with. And those guys are very successful and very happy for them. But yeah, Hampshire County, I think has a lot to offer, but we're still a ways away from where we could be. But as everything else works, it takes money. It's hard to try to throw money at a problem if it just doesn't exist. You see all these big sports complexes and different things like that for teenagers to go and do, but I think we're leaps and bounds where we used to be from when I was a
Hmm.
kid. But yeah, there's a lot more I think that can be done eventually. For instance, we've seen that issue with the pool. That was a hot spot for the town of Romney and stuff, and those guys are still, I think, struggling to get that fixed, and hopefully they do, because I remember being there as a kid, because not everyone has a swimming pool. So
Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
So, like you said, so growing up, like I said, I mean, obviously Hampshire County, the state of West Virginia, really, and I mean, I know it's not necessarily mental health wise, but when it comes to like my son who is autistic, trying to get the funds for even help with his autism has been tough. And West Virginia, and we've mentioned this in previous episodes, like we as a state do kind of we definitely fall behind on a lot of things like that, on very important issues. Not quite sure why. I don't know if it's from a economy standpoint or whatever it may be. But just like I said, you had mentioned to me before, like you grew up, like I said, in Hampshire County in the '90s, which I did too. I'm only a couple years older than you are, so I won't speak too much on that, because I mean, but even for 39, I still look pretty good and feel pretty good, I think, sometimes. But anyway, so like delve a little bit more into like what was it like. Obviously, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have things like that. So how was it really for you? Because for me, I actually saw something on Facebook the other day that anytime, or the people that were born between 1983 and 1989, which I think you kind of just missed out, because I think you're born in 1990, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah, so 1990. So in that time frame, like we grew up, anybody in that time frame grew up really before the internet, where it was really kind of just starting. And now, as more adults, we're growing up in a time where it is really all that we have and really all we focus on. So, kind of given that, like, how do you see like the differences? Like I said, you're about 6 years younger than I am. How was it for you growing up without stuff like this?
Honestly, I think it's refreshing, because now I'm so connected to my phone with work and emails, and if it goes off, I'm constantly wanting to look at it. Um, I actually lost my mom a few years ago, my adopted mom, in 2020, and going through some of the old camcorders and recordings that we were in like Winchester during like a Christmas time, eating at the not Hoss's, one of the restaurants out in Winchester. And, she was filming it around, and it was just so loud and eerie because there was no phones. and everyone was talking. And of course, you go to the same spot now and you take a video, it's very quiet. Everyone's on their phone, they're doing something. And yeah, it's like having that communication, I think, which we'll get into this mental health segment here. I think we lack it because you and I both know that if you send a text message, it may be perceived the wrong way. And I know I've struggled with that, sending messages, if I'm busy or I've got a lot going on. So, yeah.
Yeah, tone in a text message is always tough. There are many times where I have looked at a simple message and I'm like, man, that was kind of a that was kind of a dick response. Like, why would you say that? But it was just a simple like, hey Ryan, it's okay, or whatever it is. It's just a simple response, but it is so difficult to really understand tone in a text message. But I grew up without a lot of times without texting or the very beginning of texting, and you've kind of lived a life more where even, and you did mention about how your adopted mother passed, and we'll get back to that in just a second. But like obviously, like I said, you kind of grew up at really the beginning, well, I kind of grew up a little bit more the beginning stages of technology and where we are today. And you know, I've lived in a time where I can remember one dial up. I can remember a time where McDonald's didn't take debit cards, that was cash only, so I get it, but you kind of going back to the big point of this whole conversation, because I can get talking about technology and the things that we did and didn't have and stuff like that, like nothing. But you had said your adopted mom, so and I really am sorry to hear about her passing, even though it's been a few years. Still very sorry to hear that. Which obviously will lead into the biggest part of our conversation today, is and a friend of mine, Chris, said I actually had encyclopedias. Yeah, that's old school, buddy. So, you had mentioned about your adopted mom. Like, what can you talk about your childhood a little bit with with being, you had mentioned in our conversation that you kind of grew up in a group home.
Yep.
But-
So basically, my biological mom and I have a great relationship. Things happened in her life, and she needed some time to adjust and grow as a person. And I've never faulted anyone for that, because I think that's brave to do. If you're just not prepared for something, asking for help, I think was key. So, my adopted mother and father were able to take me in, and my brother, and get us in a good stable area where we had some time every once in a while to see our biological mom. But you don't really understand the impact of just that one segment of saying, okay, you're separated from your biological mom. What that does for you. Yes, it puts you in a better spot at that time, but down the road, it's you grow up in a broken home, and I think we're seeing a lot more of that these days. And it's no fault of anyone's. And the word I think I hear the most is like the generational curse, right? Everyone's trying to break that in their family bloodline. Um, but I don't want to get stuck on that, 'cause that's probably a whole nother topic. Um, but no, it was great. I had a ton of opportunities, but in the back of your head, you're like, somebody might tell you, well, your mom gave you up, okay, but what was the reason why? And I think that played an impact for probably the first 9 or 10 years of my life, of thinking that nobody wanted me, right? You having that, um, like everyone else has their mom, or if you hear somebody saying, I don't like my mom, and I'm like, well, you should. You only get one mom. Luckily enough for me, I've had two. Very lucky to be able to say that. So, um, again, my biological mom, she's amazing. She's always there for me, and I'm happy to say that now. So, biological father, maybe 5 times my whole life. I could probably pass him in a grocery store, wouldn't know him, but it is what it is. Uh,
So how young were you when you actually were adopted?
uh, I think I was about 3 years old.
Okay, so pretty young, so not really understanding, obviously at the time that it happened, but once you got to a little bit older and started to understand, what kind of effect did that have on you as a child, like as a 8, 9, 10 year old, maybe not necessarily understanding like, hey, you know, my mom gave me up at, a young age for the betterment of me, and the betterment of maybe even her as well. Like what type of attitude did you take with that, or how did that affect you, even taking from a young child to even now? Like, what kind of effect did that have on you early?
I think I made myself feel like an outcast a lot. I mean, I don't think I've ever had an issue having friends, but I still always felt like an outcast. Like, well, so and so is not going through this. I can't relate. Um, so yeah, that's probably the single word I would use, is just feeling like an outcast. And I think what that did is made me feel a little bit rebellious, going through that first stage, and also not being aware, right? Awareness is key for a lot of this mental health. Is if you don't understand what it is, don't know what it is, you don't believe in it, then you're never going to accept it for what it is. So
Yeah. So, and obviously, like, I mean, I know you had said like you can't really say like, oh, hey, I don't know what you're going through, but I really don't. I mean, I like to say that I have many moms, but I do have, I have a biological mom, I have a stepmother who, they raised me to what I am today, and I also like to look at, other friends' moms that kind of took care of me growing up, and even in my age now, like I still call, like Ethan, our co-host, his mom Trina, I call her Mama Trina, and I feel like I have many moms who really help build and shape the person that I am today. So you had said like you got one mom. Well, we really all do have one biological mother, and she really, I'm sure, did what was best for you and for her at the time. But you said you kind of got to be a little bit of a rebellious child, and whether that had any effect on that or not. But kind of leading into more your adolescent years, you had said you kind of got in a little bit of in trouble, and I'm sure that it may have had an effect. And I won't put words into your mouth, because obviously I'm not you. But what were your teenage years like? Like, now that you've really kind of understood, now that you're at a point like, okay, I know what the hell happened, I understand it. Like, what was your first response, and then how long did it take you to kind of understand, like, you know what, maybe she did do the right thing?
yeah, so I'll just kind of go to the middle school years real quick, because those were probably by far some of the best times I ever had. I didn't know a lot about life, but I started to know enough. And you start looking at things and people a little differently around that age. And yeah, some of the best friends that I made and still talk to today were from middle school, and even in sports. We always had some good football teams, basketball and baseball. I mean, some of the best friends I ever had are from those days. But yeah, again, so you start getting that awareness of like, I'm doing something stupid right now that I probably shouldn't be doing. And there's probably too many stories for this podcast right now, and some of my friends are probably watching this. They're probably having flashbacks of some of this dumb stuff that we did. So, um,
It's only
pro-
dumb when you look back on it and think, man, that really was stupid.
yeah,
Because at the time you're probably thinking, man, this is awesome.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely have some good stories, and it's nice to have friends that you can sit down with, 15, 20 years later and just hysterically laugh about everything. And this past weekend, I got to see an old friend that I hadn't seen in 17 years. And it was like we just picked up right where we left off. And it was so refreshing. And the last time I actually seen him was middle school.
Wow,
So yeah, it was amazing. It felt great. So
that's
yeah.
awesome.
So moving on into high school, freshman year went pretty well. Played half the year in sports, and my grades start slipping. I start focusing again on something else. I won't say on here. And I'll never forget. I won't mention his name, but a friend of mine's dad told me, James, if you go chasing the wrong things, you're going to go down a different path that you don't want to go down. Focus on yourself, your friends, sports, schoolwork, number one. And I didn't. So I watched my friends, the end of my ninth grade year, 10th grade year, 11th grade year, all play sports without me. And that was a huge part of me. Um, the one thing I will always say is disappointing my mother still haunts me to this day. If, when she looks at me and goes, that was disappointing, this is what you could do better. I want to help you, but being that age and being rebellious at that time, it's like you don't understand that impact until, obviously years later. Some people maybe sooner. But so again, I'm feeling like an outcast again. I started messing around with marijuana. It's obviously probably legal in most states now. People probably partake on it a lot. Um, but I started doing that, and it caught up with me my 11th grade year, and I had already felt pretty low on myself. Probably lost a good bit of friends. You'd hear the rumors like everyone does, high school drama rumors, like you're not allowed to hang out with James because he sells drugs. Like I probably didn't even know what a drug dealer was, but someone's like, "Hey, I'll give you a few bucks for this." And I'm like, "Hey, I can go, fulfill my Chinese lunch every day with this habit." So, I remember one of the teachers I used to get Chinese food for almost every day at lunch. If you're watching this, I'm sorry, but for $5.25, I could go get food every day and not eat school cafeteria lunch.
$5.25. What? Oh man,
Yeah.
those days are gone.
Yeah, no, that's and I was just telling somebody the other day, I remember going on my first date with 25 bucks. That was movie popcorn, Coca-Cola, movie tickets, and then probably buying a shirt or something in the mall for 25 bucks.
Oh, I remember those days. I remember $20 you find in your pocket, you thought you were a freaking millionaire.
Oh yeah.
Even $5 meant, you could get probably half a tank of gas or something, but I got some comments here real quick. Brandon Costello, we have done plenty. Brandon says we have done plenty of dumb stuff, but not no proof on video these days. And John Paul Bonato, you didn't lose the real ones. 100.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are two great guys right there. So I'm glad they're watching that. I'm
Yeah,
sure they've already chuckled a few times.
well, if you get a chance, guys, go back and check out John Paul's episode that we had a few weeks ago. It's a good one too, very informative and really neat to see what he's doing, with his own company now. So get a chance to go check that out. But not to cut you off, but I had some people commenting, so I was like, he might want to see that or hear those. So
Yeah, no, I'm starting to get some more flashbacks. There's some funny stuff. So that's hilarious. Yeah. So, anyways, I get in trouble, and I'm just sitting in the office, and I remember my mom coming in, and again, she's like, didn't say a word to me. I knew I was in trouble, right?
that's the worst. They say a
Yeah,
lot when they don't say anything at all.
yeah. That disappointing look. She didn't have to say anything. And I was like, well, I guess I'm gonna go home. I'm just gonna be expelled. And I remember my mom looking at the state police, going, "Take him. he's he's not coming home with me. You got to teach this boy a lesson." So I ended up at Chick Buckby at 16 years old and 2 days before my 17th birthday. And it was not somewhere I wanted to be. Once they finally put you in there and shut the door, it's pretty lonely. I'm sure there's some other kids watching that's probably had that same knee jerk reaction. Once that door shuts, it's like, oh, this isn't good.
So for
You
those who
know,
don't know, explain what Chick Buckby is.
So that is a mid-level security for juvenile detention centers in West Virginia, actually right there in Augusta. So, I probably spent 3 months there. I missed Thanksgiving with my family. I missed Christmas. Um, it was unfortunate, but my mom did the right thing, because I look back now and I'm like, if I wouldn't have had that realization at that age, where would I be now, right? So after a while, they ended up sending me to the Davis Center, which is a great facility. It used to just be an all male facility, but now they have the Rubenstein Center, which is in Tucker County, West Virginia. Um, I remember going in there, and it was probably 110 kids from all over the state of West Virginia. A lot of these kids did a lot worse than I even imagined. Didn't even want to know, honestly. But you just don't know until you get there, and you start meeting these other kids, and it's like, damn, they had it a lot worse than I did. I had great opportunities, and here they are serving juvenile life, which is could be. There was a kid in there that was 12 years old, and he stayed in there till he was 21. So a juvenile life sentence is not fun. I mean, that's your childhood, right?
Yeah.
We're not fully matured until later on in life, probably 27. Some of us probably going to be 40. So, yeah. But no, it was. it was great. I'm glad I went there. I'm glad that that decision was made, that this is what's best for James again. So twice, two mothers made a good decision for me, right? Um, we'll always be thankful for those. And, the opportunities at the Rubenstein Center or the Davis Center um, is phenomenal. I mean, a lot of people don't know this place even exists up there, but the next time anybody's driving to, Timberline Ski Resort or Davis Thomas area up there, Hell's Bender burritos are delicious. Sirianni's Cafe. I love food, man. Um, Once you get on Corridor H, when you're getting ready to get off there in Davis, you'll see the big state facility right there, and that is packed full of male and female adolescents that are troubled, that need help and guidance. And I'm looking at going up there in the next year or two and kind of telling the story. How you can go from doing dumb things to fixing your life to making mistakes again and fixing them. It's never too late. Um, so I went there and they asked me, "Do you want to go back to school?" No, I don't want to. So I took the GED track, and I remember calling my mom and telling her about that, and she's like, "Well, I still want you to go to college. I want you to do something, right?" And the subject of joining the military came up, and at this time I was 17. I was still a kid. I had I had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. Um, so I did the GED. I did my year at this group home, and really phased out. It's broken in phases on what you're allowed to do. After a while, you're playing basketball, like we're going skiing, snowboarding. I was cutting firewood. Like I actually left this facility with like $800 that I made while I was there. So that was a great time. And I anytime I drive by that place, I'm very thankful and will always appreciate that. So
If
I
it
got
makes you feel
out.
any better, I'm 39 and I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I mean, I really don't. I mean, I do this on a weekly basis. I go to my bank job every day. And, I'm like, man, as much as I'd love to do this full time, I still don't even know what I want to do when I grow up and I'm almost 40. So believe me, at 17, I get it. I thought I knew everything at 17, but I think we all do. But go on. Sorry, I had to throw that in. I was like, I don't even know what I want to be when I grow up, and I'm 40 years old. So
Yeah. Yeah, you remember what the teachers used to ask you in like elementary school, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I can think back now, I was like, man, I wanted to be an astronaut, an airline pilot. And I'm like, nowhere close.
nah, I'm
um,
not.
yeah. So I got out and when I left the facility, it's funny because they had us camping on 4th of July, and one of the guards came down and was like, Hartman, when you wake up in the morning, you're going home. I was like, it's Freedom Day. Oh my goodness. Like I couldn't sleep that night. I was all nervous. And I remember getting in the car and getting like car sick within 15 minutes because we just weren't in vehicles all the time. Like anywhere we went, it was like we were probably walking to the ski resort or wherever. We were always moving. So getting in the vehicle on that trip home, I was like, pull over, please. Um, we get home and it just was different. Life was different. And it really hit me. It's like, I'm not going back to school. My classmates still have a whole nother year of school. Like, what am I going to do? Um, and a lot of family members reached out, friends, and, I was like, I'm going to join the military. My adopted dad, served in the Marine Corps. My biological father actually did too. Um, Females, everyone in my family was Marine Corps besides my other brother Eric, and he was in the Army as a combat flight medic. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I remember eating those hoo-ah bars. Well, for some of you that don't know what those are, go look them up. They don't taste good, but you could probably live off of it for a week.
That's the point. They don't taste good, but you can live off of them.
Yeah, yeah. So I decided to go talk to the recruiter, and he's like, "Man, we'll take you. We're ready. It's 2008. We need people." So they offer you all kinds of things, and I remember going in the recruiter's office, signing papers, and then I had to break the news to him, like, "Hey, I know I'm 17, but I have a court date in 2 weeks." And I'll never forget. He was like, "Okay." So they they come to the courthouse with me. They walk in with me and my mom, and they're like, sir, we'd like to sign him up. He's young. He passed his PT test. We'd love to send him into training. I was like, okay, I'm ready. And the judge, one of the local judges, I won't mention any names, it was like, take him. He's all yours. He's going to do good. Thank you. So again, I've been gone for a year. I'm home for 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks later, I leave. I think August 14th was my of 28 or 2008 was my like pay entry base date or whatever. At this time, I'd really hung out with any friends. I'm still a kid. And, I go up to Pittsburgh. I get on a plane. I'd probably only been on a plane one other time, just shipped off into life by myself. And I remember, when they came to pick me up at the house, they're like, all right, tell your mom goodbye. And she was hysterically crying, like, oh, this is tough. And, I really didn't know what to expect. I had no idea. So, I get there. I'm at Fort Benning for the home of the infantry for you guys watching. That was tough. The training now or back then was only like 12, 13 weeks. And those guys now are serving 22 weeks at basic combat training. They call it an OSUT, a one station unit training. And so typical, if you're not like combat arms or an MOS of that nature, you're basically going from 9 weeks of basic training. Sometimes there's a plus or minus a week there just for that intake. And then you go to a different duty station for additional training for your MOST or for your MOS. So, I'm there and I remember this thing, they called it a shark attack. So as soon as you're there, you jump off the bus. I'm 17. I'm about 115 pounds. I'm carrying 2 duffel bags and I'm short. I'm like 5'6". So this is just funny watching this little like garden gnome truck through the grass here.
I'm not trying to laugh at this, given the severity and the like seriousness of the conversation, but I'm just like picturing you like short little guy, just, running into basic training. But I wanted to ask real quick before we get into that story is now joining the military, like having listened to your other parts of the story, was this more of a, and having, all of your other family members in the military, whether it be Marine Corps or Army, like, was this something that was was it more of a punishment, or was it more of like, hey, everybody else in my family did it, I'm going to do it too? Like, because it sounded like it was kind of a little bit of both. Am I right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that's, and I'm glad you brought that up because, with mental health, there's a lot of things I didn't realize that I used to do. Self-sabotage, right? And I wouldn't say join the military is exactly self-sabotage, but part of me is like, I don't deserve these friends. I don't deserve these family members. I'm just going to go out and do things right now. And so self-sabotage plus just being proud of it too. This is something that I knew that I could handle. Again, the family's like, yo, you're in shape. You could do this. You've played sports your whole life. So yeah, I'm glad I did. But again, could I have just went straight to college? Probably. Glad I didn't. But I look back on it now and I'm like, I'm happy. I'm happy I joined. And yeah.
Yeah, and I know you guys obviously, like, I didn't mention before, like in the kind of the pre-call, I guess we'll call it, with James to kind of discuss what we were going to go over today. Was I just told James, I said, be as honest as you want, talk about what you want to talk about, don't talk about what you want to talk about, don't talk about what you don't want to talk about, and I want James obviously to feel comfortable, and with any guest, I want them to feel comfortable to talk about whatever they want. So, this is kind of at the point where, getting into any kind of military conversation can always be tough. I don't personally know. Just from what I've gathered from, my grandfather served in the Navy. My cousin served in the infantry in the U.S. Army as well. But I don't know exactly what the PTSD comes from. Being in the military, if and when you get it. So obviously, James, feel comfortable with whatever you want to talk about at this point. Don't talk about whatever you don't want to talk about. So guys that are watching, everybody that's watching, like, we're not going to dig deep into, oh, he went here and here and here, and this is what happened, and I shot this gun, and shot this person and that person, blah 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 blah. We're gonna keep it simple. We're gonna keep it, we'll keep it family friendly, I guess. But just kind of want to give that kind of like, I don't want to say warning, but just kind of that preemptive, like, hey, this is what we're going to talk about, but it's still going to be relative to the point of how James and how it really has affected him, now in his more adult years, growing up and now being in the military. So just kind of want to throw that out there. But I have a couple comments here real quick. Costello again, we needed the military because who knows where we would have been. Luis Mateo, who, again, another former guest of ours. If you get a chance, check out his audio interview on, oh, shoot, what is it? Buzzsprout. There we go. Buzzsprout. It was an audio. He was also in our musicians episode. I want to say it was like the second or third episode. It might have been the first episode, if I'm not mistaken. Check his out as well. Chris Brooks, Army as well, who he did go back and say it was 36 when he started teaching. So we'll see if that sticks. So I guess I still got, I'm a couple years up after 36, but we'll see. But sorry to cut you off. Just kind of want to throw that preemptive like warning and say, hey, here's what we're going to talk about. Here's what we're not going to talk about. It is whatever you want to talk about, my friend. So floor is yours again. So whatever you feel comfortable with, discuss and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. So, being in the military, obviously had a lot of great opportunities. One of the opportunities I got was to go to search and rescue training in Ocala, Florida. For some of you that don't know, Ocala, Florida was the home of the small airport that actually trained the 9/11 terrorists. So
Wow.
the federal government came in and took that facility over and said, no, you guys didn't check these people out. You didn't do anything. Yeah, this belongs to us now. I don't know how they do that. Maybe eminent domain, some feature of that. But you run planes in our buildings, we're coming for you, no matter who you are. And yeah, so I went down there. I got asked to go, and I spent almost a year there doing search and rescue training. These were hard days, 6/12s, just busting our butt. And just when you thought you were making some progress, they would teach you something else. You're like, holy moly, I'm not an expert at this. This is, we're hanging off of, 10-story towers and different things. And it was amazing. I made some really good friends down there, some paid firefighters that were in Fort Lauderdale, because what this place would do is bring in firefighters and other military personnel that had experience, and they would come in and we would do search and rescue. So that consists of, confined spaces, trench rescue, collapse structure, just to name a few there. And some of the courses were 80 hours in length, and that's a lot of CEUs for some of the professors or whoever might be watching. Again, this was a lot of training. So it was funny because I actually developed sports asthma there. I had to use an inhaler for like 6 months afterwards.
I had sports asthma as a kid myself.
Yeah, I never had it. I would just remember I couldn't breathe. I'm like, man, what's going on? And I was about to get on a plane and fly back, and they're like, man, you need to go to the hospital. You can't breathe. So I ended up getting an inhaler for, a few months. But yeah, so that really led me into the next chapter of my life, exiting the military. And, it's like, what am I going to do now? It's like, I remember walking into the local volunteer fire department in Romney, and which is a great place. And if you're not volunteering in Hampshire County, make sure you guys get out there. These guys need the help. They're busy. They're leaving their families all the time. Calls don't happen when you're just sitting around. It's when you sit down to eat dinner or to close your eyes at night. It's every time like that. So, I remember walking in with a stack of certifications that I really had no idea like what it meant. Right. So they have a system called the Pro Board, which is like professional credentials for fire training, rescue training, and all that. And they invited me in, and I'm like, heck yeah, this is awesome. I know what firefighters do, but man, I was not, I was probably pretty naive about it. And I wasn't cocky about the training because really didn't know what I had. But it was amazing. The guys in the military transitioning out, were like, hey, you guys here, you know how to save people. You can get them out of collapsed buildings and stuff, and save them out of tunnels and do all this awesome stuff. But what are you going to do next? Like, when you get to the person, what do you do? And we're like, oh man, none of us have medical training. So a lot of us got our like EMT, emergency medical technician license, which is also can be a national registry certification, or like a state license, how to treat patients, right? It's that BLS care, basic life-saving stuff. Plug the holes, pack the wounds, that type of stuff they teach in the military, which some of the guys probably took it. The TCCC, tactical casualty combat care. I cannot talk tonight.
Basically, what you're saying is, even in your transition from the military to now getting into firefighting and stuff, like, you've seen some shit, like,
Yeah.
especially in the training that you've done. I mean, how long were you in the military for again?
So 8 years and 2 months, but I wasn't counting, right?
Yeah.
So I think you'll probably hear, and if you ask the question here, probably the toughest time of my life was, military, and probably some of the best memories. You always see those things about, hanging with the boys, right? That's one of those times. But again, right into the fire department, it's like the same type of lifestyle. We're hanging with the boys. We're at the fire department. We're cooking fried chicken. We're baking. We're grilling. Whatever. And I threw baking in there to try to make someone laugh, but you guys didn't catch that. I don't know a lot of us that are baking, but but no, it was great. I've loved every minute of it. I don't really can't say I volunteer, and I'm not a paid firefighter anymore down in Virginia. But yeah, that was led me into this next part we're getting into again, and not understanding the items that I've already been presented. I'm not dealing with any of that past, trauma or the past stuff that I went through, because first off, I really wasn't aware of it. I had no idea. But what I was noticing when I was drinking during these periods, I was going way overboard, right? And come to find out later in life, it's a coping mechanism for some people. And things would come out, drinking, doing dumb stuff. There's probably somebody could make a good comment in here. I remember one night trying to kick my windshield out. I snapped my key off in the ignition.
Oh,
It
yeah,
was,
okay.
yeah.
I've
So
never done anything like that, but yeah,
yeah,
that
yeah. So using alcohol to cope is if you don't know you're doing it, it can be pretty scary. It sounds fun when you're doing stuff and you laugh about it, and then you realize, like, man, you were
dumb as
going through
shit.
something. Yeah, like you didn't really understand what you were doing. And yeah, so you look back on it now and you start putting the puzzle together, and you're like, that's so stupid. Like, why was I even laughing about that back then? Like, I should have asked for help from somebody. But again, if you don't know, you don't have awareness, then yeah, you just don't know. So
Yeah.
so the fire department, you obviously see some things. Yeah, between suicides with kids, I've seen a lot of that down in the city, which is, it's crazy to say that you see, for instance, a 17-year-old girl in $1 million house. She had her own Mercedes Benz at 17, 4 or 5 computers, and I'm sitting there watching her dad, pretty much say goodbye to his daughter because there was nothing we could do. If you come in and you're performing a code like CPR, first thing you do, always check for a pulse. But if you're cold and stiff, it's too far at that point.
Yeah.
So having to turn around and tell the father, hey, we're sorry. We're gonna have the chaplain come out and we're gonna be here with you. The police will be up to ask some questions, and things like that would happen so often, and it doesn't get talked about enough. And come to find out, this guy now, he goes around and does speeches at high schools. But bullying, this young lady was bullied, and she wasn't overweight. She was probably a prom queen, um, had a lot going for her, right? And I remember what the dad was saying is like, I should have paid more attention. I should have paid more attention. He said he walked by her room last night and she was crying and just didn't stop in, just didn't check in, right? Um, because people get so busy. People all have their own families nowadays, so you can't just expect someone to answer the phone, but hey, I'm having a rough night. But you've got to find those friends, you've got to keep them, because obviously seeing things like that, it's just, it hurts,
Yeah.
and I was a big time believer, like, I ain't crying. I'm not crying. My adopted dad was like, we don't cry here. Mental illness isn't real. And that's no fault of his own. And I'm not talking bad on that at all. But if you're told that your whole life, like, hey, it's not cool to cry, I'm not going to. I can tell you that. But I've probably cried a million times since I've had kids now. I'm a big softie.
I get, I've always had, I've always been called I get like the soft one of the family, the one with too many feelings. And now that I'm a dad, and it hits a lot harder. And like I said in the very beginning, like I've had my depressive stages, and unfortunately it was because of girls, which is crazy to think. But there are still times where I feel like I still, to this day, like I'll ask my father, I'll ask my mom, I'll ask my family, like, or I'll even say, like, hey, I hope you're proud of me. Like, that's my biggest thing. And like that hits me the hardest. And I know that's not anywhere near, the conversation that we're having in comparison. Because I am no way, shape, or form trying to compare my, oh, hey, am I making mommy and daddy proud, compared to, like I said, the shit that you've seen and had to take care of. Like that's way, I know you can't see up here, but that's like way up here. And
Is
it's
that another
ironic.
short joke?
No, well, that could be, yes. But it wasn't intended to be, but you know what it is now that I think about it, So, but anyway, so like, and it's funny that I reached up there. It's like, oh, there's my military tent. So like that, I got that done for my grandfather in honor of my grandfather who was in the Navy, because he has an anchor on his shoulder, and I swear to God, it's a skunk. It looks like a skunk, and I think it is a skunk, but I don't think it is. Like now that I think about it, but I know he's got 2 tattoos, but he served in the Navy. And I thought that was like, oh, I got that. And here we're talking about the military and stuff like that. But anyway, so, like I'm a huge softie. I really am. But I've dealt with my own bouts of, depression and thinking I'm not good enough. And unfortunately, a lot of time it comes with the opposite sex and doesn't come with, like my family or, the jobs that I've had, like you've had, or the life that you've lived, and we didn't even really get into talk about, like, other than even like minuscule things of what you did in the military. Like, did you, just real quick, were you homebound? Were you state bound, or did you actually go overseas? Were you deployed anywhere?
Yeah, so state bound.
Okay.
So basically for me, once I got into the search and rescue, it was 72-hour response team. For instance, like the 82nd Airborne has a brigade combat team. And those guys got to move within 72 hours. When that stuff happened over in Poland, those guys were there within 72 hours. They're on a plane and they're gone, ready to go. So for me, doing search and rescue, we honestly were probably global response 72 hours, and loved it.
Yeah,
And
and Chris here said, staying super busy after our military service is a great way to not deal with issues and let them fester. And also, as I posted here on the front, like, don't minimize your stuff, man. Issues are issues. Nothing is more or less important. So, and that goes with everything, even for, everyday life. And, you said you worked as a firefighter, and you're working in like your critical, oh, what was it that your title that you were really when you were working with the fire department, and you're working and you're seeing all kinds of shit. You're seeing,
oh yeah,
from car accidents to suicides to, all these, and it can happen to anybody, unfortunately. And I don't know if that was me knocking, on wood, that I've considered myself very lucky with the stuff that I've went through, and my life I've lived, and nobody has seriously got hurt that I can recall, like from just even little things like that. And and it did hit home actually more recent, and I do not remember the young lady's name, nor do I want to put her name out there, but because I don't know much about it, but I do know that there was a young girl at Hampshire High School within the last few years took her own life because of bullying. And and it's like I said, that's the serious shit that we're trying to talk about and to accomplish here is, now that you've gotten into working with the fire company and working as a firefighter, it's not that I don't want to talk about what you've done or, the process or anything like that. But this is where I feel like it is a great time to really take everything we've talked about for the last 45 minutes and really lump it into that that main topic, which is mental health and mental illness and the mental stability of not just myself, you, not just you as, you know, a former military man, a former firefighter, but really everybody, you
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
even from like young kids nowadays.
Mm.
And we can get into a whole other discussion, or people can say this, that, and the other about how young is too young, or how, you know, young can you be to really have feelings about things and things like that. But you know, and that can be kind of a taboo topic as well. But this to me, and I won't take up a lot of time here because I really want to hear the stories and how you've coped with things, you know, going forward. But you know, like this is serious, guys. Like this isn't talked about, this isn't mentioned, because it's like you had mentioned about how you don't cry in your house. Well, I cry like a son of a bitch. Like if I gotta cry, I'm crying.
Yep.
Did was I upset because, you know, you go, no guys, I don't know how much open I can be, but you know, I'm going through the process of a divorce. You know, I am a father of a child with autism. Like life is tough right now, and it's something that I don't necessarily talk about all the time. I try not to hold it back from my everyday life, but sometimes, you know what, I cry sometimes, and it is what it is. And that, like I said, you it's kind of what I mentioned to you before as well, James. Is, you know, James hasn't mentioned this yet. I'm sure he will, but James actually reached out to me about the topic of doing this and talking about mental health and mental illness and mental stability and just kind of getting it out there. And you know, he just reached out to me in a voice or in a Facebook message, and you know, all he said was like, "Hey, you know, let's have this conversation." And during that conversation that we had, like I had mentioned at the very beginning, is honestly, I told him that, you know, you're never far away or never too far away basically to reach out. Like I don't I mean, I'm no more important than you or anybody else that's watching or listening or whatever to say like, "Hey, I'm too busy to take your phone call." Like if you reach out to me, which you did, and I told him, it's like, if you just tell me, "Hey man, I need to talk. Like I need some words." You know, I felt like, okay, I'm going to talk to him. And, you know, if you wanna go ahead and talk kind of like from your end of it, like, it wasn't a selfish thing for me. It wasn't to be like, "Oh, hey, I'm cheering this guy up. I should feel proud of myself." Like, it wasn't that. It was the fact that, like I told you, if it took me 2 minutes to talk you off whatever metaphorical or literal ledge I talked you off of,
Yep.
it's like the saying it goes, the world is better with you in it. And that's not just for James. That's not just for me. That's for, you know, like my friend Lewis here. All mental health matters equally, no matter how major or minor. You know, I have friends, I have family members, I have people that I know that are dealing with the mental health issues and stability or instability. So if you want to take it a little bit now here, James, like tell every like talk about like that, just that conversation we had just a few days ago, and how that really started, or what that meant to you, just to kind of get this whole interview going.
Yeah. So for me the other day, and I'm currently going through a divorce, and I'm gonna be straight up. Anyone watching, it's my fault. I made a lot of mistakes. Um, didn't take it serious. It's like, my wife's never gonna leave me. We love each other too much. We got 3 kids together, but enough's enough. Like, and I don't blame her one bit. I had to take some time for myself and really set back and say, James, what are you doing? What's best? Watching her be happy, absolutely. Watching the kids be happy, absolutely. So that's going to be my main focus, right? Is doing that. But what I used to do was try to cope with these things. Um, taking stuff from your past and future that you're thinking about, trying to stress out about it because it hadn't even happened yet. Gambling, man, I was dumb, right? If I could take back the money that I gambled and wasted, yeah, I'd be sitting a little different probably.
There is
But
such thing as too comfortable. It really is.
yeah, yeah. So I was like, yeah, not gonna ever lose my wife, never leaving me. Um, but I wouldn't take the warnings. And I'm like, "Nah, I'm okay. I'm better." Just saying you're doing something better, it's not going to help. It's those action items, right? You make a list and you're like, I got to knock these out, right? Yeah, you always hear those things about, where do you start at in the morning? Make your bed first. There's a rear admiral that gives a really good presentation about that. And he starts the conversation off like, get up, set some goals, make your bed, brush your teeth, do that every day, and your life changes. So for me, it's that mental health and families first. Whether I'm divorced or not, I've got to grow. I'm going to get to watch her grow. I'm going to get to watch my 3 kids grow, and I'm going to be the best parent that I can be and support everyone as much as I can. So, is it a negative thing? Yeah, for me, it sucks. It's gonna sting. It's gonna hurt. I think a lot of us are gonna have that same feelings down the road about different things. But learning what mental illnesses are, how to prevent stuff like this. I hope if there's somebody out there who's you may be doing something behind your wife's back, gambling, cheating, whatever it is, you better stop and just be honest with yourself. Because if you don't want to change for yourself, you're not going to change for anyone else. And for instance, I'm in a high stress, work environment now. Even if it's not in the fire department, occupational health and safety. I make decisions every day and about people's safety and their well being. So if James isn't, straight and narrow right now, how am I going to make effective decisions to help people, or make decisions that could impact somebody by saying, yeah, that's safe to do that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Because everything right now is risk based, and these big data centers we're building. I mean, you're looking at one building at $400 million. 500 to 2,000 workers. And I worked a job where I had 7 of those that I was overseeing for safety. And if James is out gambling and drinking all the time or cheating on his wife, that's not good, right? That's not good for home life. That's not good for business. So I've done a lot of growing up over the last couple years, especially since having kids, getting married. But I still have a lot to do. And, I think being honest with yourself and, taking a few days to really, revisit what you want to do, where you want to be, because I don't want to look back in 30 years and be like, man, I made people miserable my
Yeah.
whole life. I don't want to do that. So,
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, we have really discussed from very early in your life to your adolescent age, where you are really kind of starting to form as a person, and then you get thrown. I don't want to say thrown into, but you join the military for 8 years, 2 months. You weren't counting. Um, so you're in there for 8 years. So you're there till what, 20, what was it, 25? So, you're
yeah,
you're
just a young
basically,
buck.
yeah, I mean, so you're really getting into life in general, and you're just getting out of the military. Then you go to firefighter, which all of this, whether it is, rough childhood, military, juvenile detention center, military, then firefighter. I mean, you were in a lot of high stress, high anxiety type of places in your life in a very short amount of time. So my question to you is, with all of this, and you've kind of mentioned, like, even going through what you're going through now, like, at what age or what point did you really start to realize, like, man, my life is kind of messed up, like, or man, like, did you ever get to that point, or is it more like you're still kind of figuring it out?
So you remember that word I said earlier about self sabotage?
Mhm.
Um, you know, that word I think has single-handedly subjected myself to increasing issues. And what I mean by that is, it's like if I feel like something's caving in around me, I'm like, why wait? Let's just get it over with. When there was probably opportunities to fix it. Um, you know, I would just be like, okay, peace out. I only got one life to live. And yeah, that's a funny motto to say, but really, you know, we don't want to be like that. Everyone's gonna, they live and we die. And the last thing that I want is for me to leave behind 3 kids that are, man, my dad was awful. He wasn't there. So number one is you got to take care of yourself, because if you don't, you can't take care of others. So
Yeah, and you're right. And like I sit here and I mentioned, I know friends who have gone through some rough times, and family members that have gone through some rough times. And was I there for every one of them? Was I the most supportive person? I might not have been. I'm not going to say that I was, but I can tell you when there were times that I did feel good that I was reaching out to a friend of mine who, and you know who you are specifically, and I won't put out any names out there, but you know who you are. When just they reached out to me and they're like, "Look, I'm not doing okay," and obviously it is not you because I'm talking to you now, but yes, you did. But the person that I won't mention knows who they are. They reached out to me and they're like, "Look, this is probably going to be the last time that I talk to you. I'm not doing good, or sorry for the grammatical error, but I'm not doing well. I think that it's time. And like at this point, like I'm scared shitless. Like
yeah.
I'm literally getting like the note from my friend, and I had no idea what to do. So like I'm reaching out to the friend of ours that we shared in common, like, hey, this person is not well right now, and it's scaring the shit out of me. And I'm like, and of course, this person that I reached out to, like, we have a past and everything. So it was kind of difficult there too, but it was also like, there's still that comfortability to like, hey, like our friend needs help now. And that's kind of like, I was in that moment, like I needed to help this person and I needed to be there for them. And like, I felt good. And then there are other times where like, I don't really think about it. Like, you know, someone that's very, very close to me is, going through some issues and I don't know how to deal with it. And I'm really glad that we're able to have this conversation today is, the more people and the more instances that I can kind of take from, even just talking to you that you've gone through with your whole life is really eye-opening. And I mean, I could ask 100,000 questions like what did how have you been? How are you feeling? Things like that, but I want to hear from you, so I won't take up much more time, but I just kind of want to throw those stories out there, to kind of give a little relevancy that I do understand. And I'm glad that we're having this discussion as well as to allow the folks that are watching and listening to kind of be a little bit more proactive too, like say, hey, like Lewis said, all mental health matters equally, no matter how minor or major. So like obviously seems like you're doing well, that you've been able to reach out to me, to even say, hey, I need to talk, I need a couple of minutes talking you off the ledge essentially. So right now, with all of everything that has gone on with your life, even to the present, one, where are you now? How are things? Two, what has been the biggest stereo in all of your whole life? Like, what's been your biggest stereotype or biggest stigma with talking about or even thinking about your mental health? And three, like, where do you go from here, or where do you want to go from here, and to make sure that you minimize those not so fun, those kind of shitty days that you have to kind of relapse, I guess, essentially. Like, where do you go from here?
Yeah, so for me, it really comes down to awareness about all of this, understanding the entire situation, right? Because it's like a battlefield in a way. You don't want to just go into something blind. You want to
Now see, I
study.
caught that. I caught that
Yeah,
if you didn't do that on purpose. You made the bacon joke earlier, and
yeah,
now you're talking about, it's a battlefield and having been in the military. Like, yeah, I don't want to miss my. Did he do that on purpose? But anyway, go on.
yeah. So for me, it's a shift, right? You've got to shift what you're doing, because the old James is not changing, right? He's like, well, I'll just shift to something else. I'll just drink, or I'll just go gamble, or I'm gonna go talk to other women. Um, yeah. So really, like for me, it's kind of going to be like a spiritual awakening, because for me growing up, there was church in my life, and it felt great, right? And some of my friends in here, I went to church with them as well, and keeping that, or whatever you believe in line with your daily beliefs, is again going to be key. So for me, it's a shift, it's a refocus, a rebrand. And an action thing. We can talk about it all day, but in a year from now, if James is still in the same shoes, I'm still sitting here in the same thing, nothing happened, right? So giving yourself those action items and say, okay, this is what I need to do. Some people don't know how to do that, right? To put it into perspective here is if you were to go away for a 30-day rehab, whether it's for alcohol, gambling, sex, anything that you can think of, 30 days, they equivalent 30 days of treatment to 2 years, right? So you go over to, like, for instance, Potomac Highlands Guild, and you're getting that weekly hour session, right? But say you go to a 30-day stay, and that's what you're at for 7 days, 12 hours a day. They equivalent that to 2 years of mental treatment. So
Wow.
is it a bad thing to take 30 days to help you for the rest of your life? No, it's definitely not. People have that stigma. Oh, you went to a psych ward. Okay, they may have needed it. We may have just saved somebody's life.
Yeah, as I say, but you're
Yeah,
still here. So
yeah, absolutely. There's so many opportunities out there for help. But just being aware of that. Again, there's that word, right? Some people just don't know. Like, for instance, like the veterans, the 22 a day. Doing my travels over the last couple weeks, depending on what city you're in, holy moly, it's sad. I don't know if anyone's drove through Philly lately, but man, you see those videos of the people tweaking along the road and different things, and it's real. That's not photoshopped AI anything. That is 100% legit. Um, and I always look at people and they're like, "Oh, I'm making fun of this person." It's like that person was somebody's baby. Like, where did we lose our dignity and respect, for this person? Yeah, they got into drugs or they did this, but they're still a human, right? We've really got to love all of each other, and be supportive, because without the support of you and other people, for me, I would have had a really hard time trying to do this by myself. I can tell you that right now. You lose the love of your life, or you lose access to your kids. Nobody wants that. That's devastating. And that does not help your psyche at all. So again, to kind of wrap up that, it's a reshift, or it's a shift, it's a rebrand, and it's a focus. It's training. You've got to train yourself, um, to stay mentally tough. You know.
yeah, and it's Boone Menshaw just had said it's so hard to stay tough mentally these days. Social media has, and that's very true with social media now. As much as a blessing that social media can be, it can also be a huge freaking curse. Social media has created what I call compare then despair. In other words, people post their best lives on these platforms, but people always aren't what they post to be or what they are supposed to be. So folks see these people living their great lives and compare theirs to what they've seen others post, and ultimately despair over it. So yeah, get compare and despair. It's an important topic. Lost more friends than I care to count. The stigma around um, it goes on a little further, but so I mean, obviously the stigma is there, and I get it, and I'm going to be first, if I'm not the first, and I'll be the next, or I'll be the last until the next one, just to say thank you. Not just for your military service, not for you being a firefighter, not for getting on here, or actually yes, for getting on here and really telling your story. And I think that's kind of something that even goes by the wayside as well, is just a simple freaking thank you. I almost caught myself. I almost dropped the F-bomb. I told you I wasn't going to. I almost did. But that's just kind of how passionate I am too, is just a simple freaking thank you.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
thank yous go a long way. I never had I never went to the military. I never, I'm always like, if I see somebody at my job and they've got a Vietnam vet or U.S. Army vet or anything veteran related, I'm always saying, like, thank you very much for your service, because it is important to me, and it does allow me to, as everybody knows, it allows and grants me the freedom to be able to do this, just to even sit here and talk to you about, your struggles in life, your joys and your downfalls and all that. Like, these are the people, you were included, that allow me to be able to do this. So I say thank you. And a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah.
And, and this isn't just necessarily from a mental health standpoint. I mean, it's a thank you. I mean, if you go back and you look, like, some of the greatest people on this earth have ended their life due to mental illness. You're Robin Williams, you're Chester Bedingfield, a great singer for Linkin Park.
Yeah.
You've got Mac Miller, the rapper. You've got, those are three. I could probably name a couple more, but for time's sake, you know, you never truly know. Like, you go back and look at their pictures, you're seeing Mac Miller with Ariana Grande. You're seeing, all the funny Robin Williams movies. Chester Bedingfield, huge international musician and singer. And, Chris Cornwell from, they sang Black Hole Sun, Soundgarden. Yeah, I think is what it was. I always forget that band name mixed up. But anyway, between Soundgarden and Savage Garden, I always get those two mixed up, but it's Soundgarden. But, like, you see, like, you go back and look at pictures and they think they live this great life. And, it's like Boone said, you see the social media. Thank you, Chris Brooks, Cornell, Soundgarden. I had it right. I just messed it up a minute. But anyway, like, just see the smiles on these celebrities' faces, and they ended their life due to, depression and suicide and stuff. So, obviously, thank you for not only your service, but thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing everything you have. And, of course, I want nothing more than to see anybody happy. Am I going through a divorce? Yes. Do I want to see her happy? Absolutely. Because if she's happy, then that means my son's happy. That makes me happy.
Yeah.
And,
I agree.
and that goes on for, that could go on for, making the 7, this, what is the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. I could sit here and, discuss, but this is all about you. So anyway, the point is like you said, you kind of want, and from what it sounds like, is you really want to go and you want to tell your story more. And it's not just, I mean, obviously it is from a standpoint of getting the awareness out there and getting people to understand, to even just say a simple freaking thank you, just to help somebody. So like I said, what else now? Where does James go from here? Like, what are your plans, if you have any? Or is this where you just kind of taking day by day?
Yeah. So for me, it's going to be, day by day. You gotta smile. You've got to talk to people. One thing for me, it's that self-sabotage that's got to go away. Again, I never thought in a million years that I would be like, yeah, I wish my wife happiness without me, but I truly do, and that's hard to say, because it's like, man, I'm gonna, spend more time watching her exceed and be happy without me than I got to be with her. And I'm proud of, for instance, everything that she's done and she's going to accomplish. And it's not just like, I think, going through divorces, it's two people that have to heal. There's things that happen in relationships every day. For instance, I told somebody that, this is what's happening, and they're like, wow, you guys seem so perfect. I'm like, yeah, but doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I got 4 college degrees and a nice car and a good job. Like, none of that matters. Your mental health and what you're trying to do in life it's got to be intertwined with that other person, right? So, not being honest about, mental health and learning how to cope with certain things, because you may not know that your spouse has an issue. And if you don't look into that and try to be of assistance, I mean, it's just going to be like throwing gas on a fire. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like I said, even you just calling me the other day to talk for 15 minutes, I feel like it didn't. I'm not gonna lie, it didn't make me feel good about myself. It made me feel like I accomplished even just the smallest thing. And I really do hope, from, person to person, human to human, man to man, like, I really hope that did help, even in the slightest, and not just to be able to, I never looked at, I mentioned this to you, like, I never looked at that as, oh, this would be a great podcast episode. Like, this was your idea. This is what you wanted to do. This is why I wanted you on it. It wasn't to promote this podcast. It was and is to promote the shit that isn't talked about. And it's to really get people to understand, like, quit being that douche. Like, quit being that dickhead to people. Like, you don't know what somebody's going through. Like, I might sit here and smile, but I'm going through a divorce. I'm going through the rough days of, trying to make sure my 6-year-old autistic son is okay and living his best life. I might put on a smile, but it's tough. You don't know my trials and tribulations of my day-to-day life, but I'm still willing to talk to you and make sure you're okay. So
Yeah.
if people just gave the same respect out, then the world would be a lot better place. And like I said, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your evening, out of your day to really talk about things that people might have not have known about what you're going through or what I'm going through or what anybody's going through. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. And I think the last thing that I would say is that, you're not alone. If you're out there listening, I'm telling
You're
you right now,
not.
as soon as I started reaching out, people are like, yeah, me too. And I'm like, wow, 4 people in a week that I reached out to. And it's like, man, we can do better as a team, us kings out here, right? Right. I see the cup. I don't know if anyone's seen it. You're an awesome dad. If you're out there and you're a dad, you're doing an awesome job. Keep up the good work. Keep
And
growing.
moms too. And moms
And
too.
mom. Oh, absolutely.
Definitely didn't want to, not talk the moms, the grandmas, the grandpas, the uncles, the aunts, whoever you are, you're
Yeah,
probably doing a good job.
absolutely.
Well,
So
James, I mean, once again, thank you so much for joining us. I know we kind of missed out on Ethan a little bit. I'm going to text him and give him a hard time and be like, "Hey, man, you're working in the judicial system over in good old Martinsburg, and making that real good money." And I'm going to give him a hard time about his computer messing up, but so definitely, if you think of something, let me know and I'll give it back to him. So, but thank you
awesome.
so much again. Thank you guys all for watching. Like I said, this has been something we kind of put together in just a couple of days, but we really didn't need a whole lot of time to really think about what we're going to talk about. It was really just to kind of get James's story out there, what he's been through, to kind of get that to really get that awareness out there, and just to say, like, hey, as I mentioned before, don't just assume somebody's, great just by the smile. Like, there's something deeper to it. You really don't know what somebody else is going through until you really listen. And like I said, I really hope that our 15-20 minute conversation that we had really helped, because like I mentioned too, is we're both humans. I'm not, I am not in any way, shape, or form above anyone, and I don't think that I am. But I try to be a good human being. So, uh, Lewis did say, "Grateful for your courage and bravery to tell your story, James."
Right
And
on.
Boone
Thanks.
Boone also said, "Guys, read the poem Richard Cory by Edward Arlington Robinson. It's a pretty good one. It relates to this subject for real. Check it out. Thank you for your service." Nikki Long also, "Hang in there, James, and thank you for your service. I'm always here if you need an ear." So,
Awesome.
uh, oh, she fixed her. Thank you. So, again, guys, thank you for everyone who watched, who listened, who took the time out of their evening to really listen to James's story, to even my little bit of story that I had. Like I said, I'm not perfect. I host this podcast once a week, sometimes once every other week, depending on when life can kick you in the nuts. Sometimes it really can, and it doesn't allow me to do it every week. But here I am. I put on a smile, but I'm going through some shit. He's going through some shit. Everybody goes through some shit when at some point. So just reach out to your friends, answer the phone when you can, because you'd never want that to be the last time that they call you. So if that's all you got, buddy, once again, thank you so much for joining us. Well, joining me. I'm used to saying us because there's usually somebody else, but thank you for joining me and us as a group to share your story and to really talk about it. And, if there's anything else you want to add here before we go ahead. Floor is yours, buddy.
No, again, I'm just I'm thankful for you taking my call and listening to me, because again, people don't realize what 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes will do for somebody. And I was excited to do this because, you know, it's just a stigma. And I think that, if you don't know me, I'm not shy anymore. And this is something that is important to everybody, not just men, not just people that are in the military or out of the military, fire department. It's everybody. Everyone's going through something. So thank you again for having me.
No problem. And thank you guys again very much. And feel free to reach out to myself. If friends, not friends, reach out to James. If he feels comfortable talking,
Sure.
we're here. We can share our stories. We can, talk you off that ledge. We could just talk and have a conversation and try to make everybody and everything a little bit better. So again, thank you for James Hartman for joining us this evening here on the Open Fields podcast. Again, thank you guys for watching, for listening, taking time out of your evening. We very much appreciate it. And we will see you on the next episode of the Open Fields podcast. See you guys later.
See ya.